Guess what I'm reading? You're not gonna guess. I read the weirdest stuff. I read random stuff. So, what unexpected books am I reading this time? The book that I am using for research right now is called The Games Black Girls Play by Kira D. Gaunt. Clearly, this author has a PhD and has not listed it on their book cover or on their little author blurb on the back. If I had earned a PhD, I would be putting those letters in everywhere. Anywhere, everywhere, you name it. The Games Black Girls Play it's come up in a couple of other things that I've read as like a cited source. And in those contexts, I thought the book was about the physical, like the physical play and the expression of confidence. One of the reasons I started reading this book was because I wanted to understand the cultural context that some of my students are coming from better. I know that a lot of Black women not a lot, probably all Black women deal with the stereotype of the angry Black woman, which is not accurate. Confident Black women tend to be stereotyped negatively as angry when they are confident, and there's a difference. And so I started reading the book because I wanted to get a better cultural context for where my students were coming from so that I didn't misread or misunderstand something. You know, I don't want my students to feel like they need to play smaller for my comfort, because they don't. None of my students need to do that, but in particular, my Black students do not need to play small for my comfort. I am a grown-up. I can handle myself. So that's why I picked up the book. That is not what the book is about. I'm not quite sure how or why it got cited in those types of conversations. This is an ethnomusicology study. So this looks at the intersections between race and gender in particular, which is great. Like, it's super valuable for me to be reading this. I am aware that race and gender intersect, but because my race is the privileged race, because I am so pasty white, I've never really had to think about how those two intersect. I'm aware of it. I know that it's a big part of a lot of people's day-to-day navigation, but this is a really good opportunity for me to think about it in a much deeper way. It talks a lot about music. Music studies. The author talks about how in Western education, so the university system that we have set up in the United States currently, Western music is privileged for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is because it's written down. Whereas when you look into the contributions of Black musicians and the history of Black music in the United States, and when you look at Indigenous music, they don't have the same written down. People didn't sit down with their quill and their parchment and write things down. And so they are not valued in the same way in the academy. So that's one of the ideas that I've been thinking about, is just because something isn't written down doesn't make it less valuable. It just means that learning about it is going to take more effort on my part. I'm really glad that I'm reading this book. I'm thinking really hard. It's taking me a minute to get through because this is written by someone with a PhD. This is written at a really high level. It's really deep. There's a lot of theory in it. There is some presumed knowledge. So I am processing a lot of ideas. It's not like, let me hold your hand on your way through this. So it's taking me a while to get through, but I'm thinking of a lot of things in ways that I hadn't thought about them, specifically music. If you're interested in reading this book, one of the things I have read that helped kind of lay some really, really basic foundation is How to Be an Anti-Racist. If you are white and you haven't read this, I really, really, really recommend it. It's a really good starting place. These foundations are assumed in this book. That's what I'm reading for research. But reading is also fun. So the reading that I'm doing for fun is this one, A Movement and Metaphor by Lincoln Kirstein. Yes, the Lincoln Kirstein, the guy that co-founded New York City Ballet. This book is out of print, but it's not super hard to find. You can get a copy online. So this is not at all what I expected either. I guess this is just the season of me picking up books, thinking one thing and being like, oh, nope, learning something else. I thought that this book would be about artistry and line and expression of metaphor in nonverbal ways. It is none of these things. This is a ballet history book, and it specifically talks about the history of ballets. So instead of going really deeply into like ballet de cour or romantic ballet or Russian classical or whatever, it talks about the specific ballets. There are some things about this book that I really, really like. So let's just show this off for a second here. For example, this is the section that talks about Giselle. And one of the things I really like about this book is that for every single ballet that is looked at, it looks at the priority. You probably can't see, but the priority. So what was the choreographer's main intent? It also sometimes talks about the priority of the person who financed it. The next section that every ballet gets is precedent. So what ballets or operas or plays or classical music came before that helped to lay the groundwork. It's written in chronological order, so you can kind of get that thread on your own, but it is really helpful to have the precedent, because sometimes the precedent for one thing is like 100 years before and we're revisiting an idea. So it's nice that that kind of gets laid out for you. But the thing that this book includes that I have not seen in any other ballet history text is this section right here, politics. It talks about the politics behind every ballet and what was going on in the power structure, why this was either approved by the power structure or disapproved, which is really interesting and not something that gets included really ever. And then every ballet also, they cover the plot or pretext, because some ballets do not have enough information in them to be considered a plot. And then it also considers production details for each ballet, costumes, lighting, sets, stuff like that. So every ballet gets a lot of information about it, and yet every ballet is covered in just 2 pages of text, and then every ballet has 2 pages of pictures. So originally they are drawings. As we get later on in time, they do become photographs. Here we are. This is the ballet Orpheus. Those are photographs. But the structure of the book stays the same. Every ballet talks about the priority of the production. It talks about the precedent that laid the groundwork for the ballet, or possibly what the ballet is reacting against, but more often where the groundwork came from. It talks about the politics of the culture, society, kingdom, whatever that it was created in. It talks about the plot or the pretext, and it talks about the production. I also love that all of those start with P. It just makes my heart happy. So those are the 2 things that I'm reading. The games Black Girls Play, Movement and Metaphor. What this means is that every day as I drive to work and I'm thinking about like what I'm going to work with my students on, I'm running into my head and I'm like, oh, well, it ties into this ballet, and here's the historical evolution of this idea. And I'm also thinking, okay, what am I privileging in my teaching? What am I choosing to say? Because when you choose to say one thing, you are also choosing not to say another thing. This is what I'm doing. It's super fun. And yeah, I bet you didn't guess I was reading that, because I read some really random stuff.